Joining me is former New South Wales Treasurer Michael Costa. Michael, always great to see you. Hey, listen, do you feel any sympathy for Philip Lowe? Is he being made the fall guy here?
Look, I think he is, but I would say that anybody that was in the position that he's in would be the fall guy. So it's not a personal thing. I think the job itself is a difficult job to conduct when things are going wrong. And the reason I say that is it's a very confused organisation. It has, and this report focuses partly on this, but it doesn't resolve it. It keeps the fundamental contradiction in place, and that is it's got a dual mandate. On the one hand, it's got to keep the monetary position stable. You know, it's got an inflation target of around 2 to 3%, and that's its price stability mandate. But on the same token, on the other hand, it's got a responsibility for full employment, and even worse in the Australian context, which doesn't exist in other contexts, it is responsible for Australia's prosperity. A really vague set of words. Now, nobody can achieve that with one lever that these people have under their control, and that is the interest rate. So, you know, this report actually, Andrew, has some good things in it, and mostly it continues the conflicts and the problems that we've had in the past, and I don't see it contributing very much to anything else. Just in Lowe's defence, you know, the Treasury Secretary's been sitting on that board too. So the government's had a direct input on that board. And in fact, on the new policy board that they're talking about, they've got the Treasury Secretary still sitting on it. So it's a bit harsh to blame him personally. I think the contradiction lays with the institution. There's some good things in it, Andrew, you'd be happy about. On the climate change, and I'm happy about as well, of course, on climate change, they've basically recommended that it have no role in terms of monetary policy, nor should it have. So I thought that was a positive. They've also argued that the government's ability to override the board, you know, in other words, giving it full independence, should be enshrined. But all of those things aren't really going to help in terms of monetary policy when you've got a conflict. The bottom line is that the government itself causes many of the problems that the Reserve Bank has got to deal with. You know, when you're running, you know, massive budget deficits and you've got massive, government debt, the hands of the Reserve Bank are pretty tied. I know the report says they should talk, but if the government chooses to run a budget deficit, where does the Reserve Bank go? It doesn't control fiscal policy. And if you actually look at this monetary board that they're talking about putting into place, it talks about experts. But, you know, anybody that's been around economics knows that you can get different experts with different ideological biases that all claim to be economists and have different models. So even that's not going to work. And the test of this is, of course, they've just lifted this proposal straight out of what goes on overseas. The Bank of England has that policy board that they're talking about, and its inflation rate is over 10%. It's worse than Australia's. So in one sense, you could say they could congratulate Phil Lowe because he kept it 2% less than the Bank of England. And the same with these meetings. You know, this all the hullabaloo about having 8 meetings instead of 12 and making it a gradual increase in interest rates. I mean, that already occurs. The Federal Reserve does that in the US. So, you know, it's all, to me, it's all smoke and mirrors. There's some good things in it. The second half of that report is that utter garbage. It's management garbage. It's like, you know, one of these management consultant firms has come in there and, you know, has the usual nonsense about culture change and 360-degree reviews, and all this stuff has nothing at all to do with monetary policy. If you've got a government running huge deficits and you've got, you know, massive money printing going on by the Reserve Bank to fund those deficits, you're going to have inflation. You know, that's the bottom line on all of this. And I think they squibbed the chance to do something good and structural. It's all tokenism, and it's there's nothing really radical in it, Andrew, despite the headlines.
I think you have summed that up brilliantly, Michael. You're absolutely correct. The reason the Reserve Bank had ruinously low interest rates for so long was they meanwhile had a Morrison government that was spending money like unbelievable amounts. What else could it do? I mean, it's just ridiculous. Michael Costa, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate that. Great.